We have two wonderful experts in the house to talk about it. You might notice in the program that Patrick was supposed to moderate the panel, but unfortunately, due to a last-minute bump, Patrick cannot make it. So this is going to be a fireside chat. We have Alexis, who is the founder of eRepublic, and we have Xavier, who is the founder of Digital Legends. Now, Alexis actually founded eRepublic because his wife wouldn't let him play games. So he actually, I'll let people come in quickly. We'll do the turnaround. So Alexis actually founded a gaming company. So he's based in Bucharest, but the development team is here in Madrid. And Xavier, he joined a company to help a friend and clean it up. And this was 15 years ago. And guess what? He's still there to this day. And what they're going to talk about today is really about why has social gaming taken off? Why is it so competitive? And what is the future of gaming? And in this session, about 30 minutes in, we're actually going to allow some time for questions, 10 minutes. So get thinking, because we want to get some good audience questions in the last 10 minutes. So with that, Alexis and Xavier, over to you two.
Thank you. Thank you.
You guys have to...
Good. Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Everything okay? Who here has ever played a mobile game? So you have... Come on. It's like, this is not shameful anymore. It's okay to play mobile games now. It's okay. I mean, that's... You say, the reason I started mobile games company is because my wife wouldn't let me play games. So it's fine. It's okay. Now it's okay. I don't have to do that. It's okay. But anyway, let's start with Xavier, or Javier, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, both work for me.
Both work for you. So, Javier, you're one of the pioneers, I would say, of mobile games in Spain. I mean, actually, I think at the first time that Steve Jobs went on stage to present the App Store, you actually went on stage in the Apple keynote to present one of your games. So why don't you tell us about how you started and how you ended up, speaking next to Steve Jobs?
Okay, so thanks, Alexis. Yes, we started the company a long time ago. We were a PC company, PC console company. And we met some guy from Finland at that time, a company called Nokia. And they were doing, they had a vision of the future of games would be on mobile. They had a great team, and they convinced us, so we started doing a mobile game for a device called the N-Gage. You had to talk, side talking. So we did the first 3D games on mobile. And at that time, Apple was about to launch a phone. They contacted us, and we started to work with them. Everything happens really, really quick. So within 1 month from the first contact, we were on stage presenting our game. And at that time, nobody thought that the App Store would be so successful, and that game would represent over 80% of the App Store incomes. So since that time, or after, you can imagine that you're on stage, you're with Apple, you're everywhere. So we had people calling. During 1 week, it was impossible to take the phone at the office. And we were projected to somewhere we're not expected. And so we ended working with big company. We got a call from Disney. Oh, can you do games for us? Oh, yes, of course. Electronic Arts, can you do game for us? So we started doing a lot of games for other people, which is what you call games for hire, which was very good because it was good money. It was a lot of knowledge. We work on big IPs such as Battlefield, for example. I remember the first time we started Battlefield. Whoa. The problem of that is that it's not really generating value as a company. So a couple of years later, we just realized that it was good, but we were doing games for others, so we're not getting any credit for that. And beside the know-how and how to work on big project, so we decided. I remember. So we went to see. We went for a round. worldwide. So went to China, went to Silicon Valley, Sun Silk Road, if you're familiar with that. We went to the East Coast, everywhere, and then talking to VCs to bring the company to the next level. And then the guys told us, "Oh, yeah, that's very interesting. You have a lot of potential, but doing games for others is not generating value." So then that was a big clash, a big shock. And so we came back to our investors that are seated here, by the way, and we told them, "Look, we're going to stop everything we've been doing. So no more contracts from Disney, no more contracts for Adidas. So we say no to all that money. And all the money we have, we put it in one game." And their answer was, "Well, okay, let's go for it." So, and that was probably the wiser decision we made ever. So we started with a product that we launched, and so it was the first social gaming. We thought it was going to be lasting for 1 year. It has been there for over 4 years, and we've passed the 35 million downloads. So that was a good decision. So I think I'm gonna hold out. So you, Alexis, it's interesting because you come from the internet world, and then you decided to move to games. So why did that happen?
That's exactly the question that Nicholas Zenstrom asked me before I did this Fireside chat. Just now, I was like, "Alexis, how did you move from London, internet, lastminute.com, travel company to games?" So you have the funny answer, which is my wife didn't let me play games. Obviously, that's not the only reason, although it is a big reason. No, because I really understood the internet. I didn't know how to design games. I liked games, I enjoyed games, but I really felt that when I started Republic, it was in 2007, and I was just getting sick and tired of having to almost buy a new computer each time a new game would come out. I was tired of waiting times to install games and all that, and I felt that games were way too niche. And it just didn't make sense. It's games on console and games on a PC that you have to install. Just to me, in the internet world, when everybody had a browser, it made no sense. So we actually started doing a browser game. So it was basically a game that you could play in Internet Explorer or Firefox or that sort of thing, which was called therepublic.com. We had absolutely no clue what we were doing. I mean, none of the people in the team had any experience of doing games other than being players and all that. Normally, in my experience, is a recipe for a company you should not fund and that will not work out. But we were quite lucky and also very determined to make it succeed. And we had a very kind of interesting concept. So actually, that game called therepublic.com went on to be played by over 8 million people. It actually still exists today. We're on our 9th anniversary for that game, and it still has a few 100,000 people playing it regularly, and it's a profitable game for us. But it's a browser game. So that's how we started. We raised around the funding for it, and we basically grew. And then the ground fell from under our feet because after we launched it, first of all there was Facebook Canvas games that appeared, and then browser games were completely out of fashion. This is like a year after we launched. It's not interesting, not fundable. You've got to be on Facebook Canvas. And we had all of our technology and all sorts of stuff was not really meant for Facebook Canvas, so we kind of missed that ship. And then just when we actually put it on Facebook Canvas, it was like, again, the ground fell from our feet again. It's like, no, it's all about mobile games. This guy was on stage next to Steve Jobs presenting his game, and I was doing a Facebook Canvas game. I was like, so the lesson you have here is in startups, timing is very important. In game startups, timing is everything. I mean, you really need to get it right. I mean, now, fortunately, we are now a recognized mobile games developer. We have a game that just was released about 10 days ago called World at War, which is a strategy MMO, our second strategy MMO. That we were very lucky. It was featured worldwide by Google Play in the first spot, except the US, they put us fourth. And then on iOS, we had a big European feature. So that means that thanks to that and our efforts, we now have 1 million downloads of that game, 1 million installs of that game within 8 days. So that also gives you, we took for eRepublic.com on browser, it took us maybe 2 years to get to 1 million installs. And now with World at War, it took us 1 week. So it's kind of showing you how popular this is becoming. And to be honest, if you compare our number of 1 million downloads in 1 week to Pokemon Go, that's actually not a mega hit. That's a nice little hit for a nice company, but it's not a mega hit. I mean, I think Pokemon Go was They've got
40 million, 400 million,
400 million installs in a few weeks. So that's basically how we got started, and that's where we are. But coming back to you, and how are you seeing right now the games market? What do you think are the interesting things about it, the challenges?
Yeah, so games market is very crowded. So you're fighting against millions of apps. So what is very important is that you need to have something different.
Yeah.
So if you copy another game, even if you do it better, it won't work. So you really need to have something to put soul in your games to make it different. So for us, we specialize. After doing Battlefield, it's a very complex genre, which is a shooter, FPS. So it requires of very high technology, very complicated multiplayer, so the entry barrier in that specific genre was very high. And we have, I would say, our differentiator is we have a cutting-edge technology. We work with our own engine. So we have one of the best engine in the world. So that's why we're featuring and we're launching with Apple or with the phone manufacturers. When they release a new phone, they need super cool apps, something that looks and to showcase their phones, and we're very often there. So to compete, you need something different. So you need really to be good at it. You need to offer something different to the market. It doesn't necessarily need to have a lot of technology. If you check, Flappy Birds,
yeah.
Just, it looks like a silly app, but it just catch it up. So the games need to have that magic. So that's one thing. So then you can say it's a kind of roulette. I would say not necessarily. So we believe in iterating and becoming super specialized on something. So if you check company like Supercell, they've been doing the same games for year and year and year, and they reached the maximum. I would say that's the maximum exposure or how good you can be on making a game, and those teams are able to cancel a game if it's only top 25. So, so that's it. So you need to be on a spot, and you need to be good. So you need to start working on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So just what do you feel about that? How are you approaching that?
I think I agree with you. I think the games market is what you call a red ocean right now. So blue ocean is a market where you have very few competitors, and if you come in with a good product, you have a really good chance of doing very well. Red ocean is basically a market where it look like we're friendly right now, but he's probably going to stab a knife in the back of my back when we walk out. No, I'm kidding. But seriously, it's extremely competitive. If you're not a very big company, if when you launch your game, if your game doesn't get one of those 5 or 6 important slots for featuring from Apple or from Google Play, you're going to have a really tough time. Everybody's competing for that. Again, if your game doesn't have a bit of innovation, as you were saying, and I agree with you, it's going to be very hard to stand out. But now even more than that, if you look at Pokemon Go, which is the example that everybody knows here, although it's kind of gone down, I think it's gone from a high of $16 million revenues a day, which is not bad, to about $2 million today after about 3-4 months of launch. So you can see sustainability and retention in games is extremely important. But also, if you look at a game like Pokemon Go, there was a previous game from that same company, I think it was called Ingress.
Yep.
And it was pretty much the same game with the location-based device, or it already had the location-based stuff, they had the augmented reality, you had all that sort of stuff, but they didn't have the Pokemon IP. Okay? And so that game had maybe, a few hundreds of thousands of people playing, but definitely not 400 million. So to really make a big hit, you had to have the innovation, but you had to cross that with a really, really strong IP, which means that, again, the difficulty and the level has gone higher again. So I think right now, my reading of the games market is that it's extremely competitive, especially in mobile games. It's a complete red ocean, and only the strongest and the fittest are going to survive. And only the exceptionally talented, exceptionally determined, the really people that are actually going to thrive. But the ones who thrive, the good thing, the ones who do really well, they do amazingly well. I mean, the successes are runaway successes. I mean, if you look at Supercell, for example, it is the only startup in Europe, the only one that has an exit. Supercell is the guys who do Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, and those sort of games. They've just been acquired by Tencent, a Chinese company, for $10 billion. $10 billion.
And there are 100 people or more?
They're now about 200 people. So if you think about their 200 employees, I think their turnover with 200 employees is $5 billion. And I think their EBITDA margin is about $2.5 billion. So we're not there yet. We're working on it. I'm sure investors are waiting for you for that. So are mine. But it kind of shows you that, yes, it's a red ocean. Yes, it's super hard. Yes, it's super competitive. But it's really exciting. Because when you get it right, and I think if you try hard enough, you get it right, then really the sky is the limit in terms of what you can reach. So that's what I like about it.
If you allow me, I have a tiering in mobile games. So you have games that lose money, which is probably 80% of the games. You have games that do below a million. Then you have the several $1 million games per year, so per game per year. And then you switch to the 10 million, and then to over the 100 plus. And it's a kind of hockey stick. So each time you get to a new tier, normally companies that get to that new tier, they manage to stay there. So it's not just out of the blue. Yeah. So, and I think here in Spain, we have a lot of companies that are just switching tiers. So developing a game which you expect to be hundreds of millions, it's quite complicated and really complicated. So you need luck, you need a lot of things. You were talking about Pokemon Go. I think it was a huge surprise for everybody. Nobody was expecting that to happen. I even read yesterday that it was not. They launched a minimal viable product, so it was almost a test. And when you check the game from a game design, it's not really well done, but it had that magic. Yeah. So what we're saying, if you have innovation and if you work on it, you can be moving from tier to tier, and this is things that we're seeing and that are happening.
That's true. When we're backstage talking a little bit about the market and industry, one of the things that you really insisted on was the importance of retention and how key retention is to a successful game and all that. So can you explain this to us a little bit more, what you mean by retention, how it works, and what are the little tricks of the trade that you can share here about how you work with retention? I think an important thing also say how retention is important for games, but actually it's important for anything you're doing now, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, so games now, and especially we're talking about social games, everything is measured. So we all work on KPIs, and retention, I would say, is the number one KPI. So because once it's very complicated to attract a player to your game, so you want that player then to stick to your lane as long as possible. So we measure like day 1, day 7, day 30, day 180. And for us, retention, you have, I would say, two main things. One is quality. And game becomes, it's not a product that you launch and that's it. It's a product now, it's a service. So you're going to be updating that game, you're going to be listening to your community, you're going to be integrating their feedback, so you make it a live project. And normally the teams that we use after launch are bigger than the team we had before launch. So when you develop a game, when you launch it, so we had a product, Respawnable. When we launched it, it was our first, I would say, big IP that we launched. We thought the game will be, we'll be working on that game for 1 year. And we had no money for marketing. Well, lucky because Apple and Google love the game, so they've been featuring it. But we have no budget for marketing, and just by putting quality on the game, just by listening to the community, just by feeding the community. So we got you need to be very active on social media, and the community is super active as well. So that's very funny. They really are engaged with the project. So that's one of the points. The other one is the multiplayer. So you need to interact with others. So that social part of the game, Pokemon Go, one of the, I think, the key of the success was that everybody was talking about it. Everybody was comparing how many Pokemons you have, who has complete all the Pokemon, so that is very, very important.
It's also a great way to convince your kids to go on a walk. It's like, let's go for a walk. No,
that's fantastic.
Let's go hunt Pokemon Go. Okay.
Exactly. So that social competition is really the center of that retention, because people will be engaged, they will be competing against their friends, and that will make the game last. So that game that we launched we thought we were going to be working on for 12 months, has been there for 4 years now, and it's still super steady. We have a super engaged community. We launch, each year we do a Halloween update. So if we launch the Halloween update 1 day later, the day after, we have a lot of people on the Twitter just complaining, what happens this year, you're late, no Halloween. So the community is very, very important.
So I think what you're saying is really interesting, because whenever I have people that ask me and they want to understand, but how do mobile games really work? I mean, explain to me from an industry perspective. And what I explained, so my grandfather was a movie producer, and I say the people who do console games, they're movie producers. They're doing movies. It's all about opening weekend, how many boxes you can ship, how many you sell, and all that. The people who do mobile games, we're more like TV producers. We're like Game of Thrones. We start with the pilot. So that's the game that we developed during a year. We soft launch it. We try it in the country. We test it. We see what the retention is. Does it monetize well? Is it working okay? And all that for a few months. So we start getting some information. So we actually, comparatively, we don't spend that much money. I mean, they do still. I mean, the budgets are going higher. I mean, Kebab's mentioned that tens of millions to do mobile games now, but still, it's reasonable. And then if we see the pilot is good, we bring it to the platforms. We launch the pilot. And then basically we keep updating it the whole time. And so in your case, so Respondables is like Game of Thrones on its 5th season. And maybe your peak wasn't the first season. Maybe your peak was year 2 or year 3. In our case, we reached our peak for Republic.com on the 4th year. That's when we had the most users and the most revenue. Now those peaks are getting shorter. Actually, I'd like to have your opinion on that. For example, we launched a game. Our previous hit before World at War was a game called Age of Lords, which we launched in March of last year. And that game launched very well. And exactly a year after launch, that's when we reach our peak revenue, our peak user. And since then, it's been slowly declining. And one of the big worries I have, and I'd like to have your opinion on this, is that maybe these cycles are becoming shorter and shorter, and it's getting harder and harder to have 5 seasons, 6 seasons.
That, I don't know the answer. I mean, our last project we launched a year ago, which is a realistic shooter. We partnered with an Asian company, which is a Korean company in the Costa, called Game Come to us. And it was funny. So we had, I think, the biggest feature you can have with Apple. So we're editor choice worldwide. So that means millions of downloads in a weekend. And so we thought, yeah, that's the maximum, that's the peak. But 3 months later, we updated, it was on Halloween, and we got a bigger peak than the launch peak, just by updating content. And last week, we updated another one, and we had another peak. So it's really fascinating, because the market is really live, and it's super reactive. One thing, and I think going back to the Red Ocean thing, is in social games, people want to spend money.
True.
Okay? So that's complicated to understand at the beginning, because you think people's going to copy, they're going to hack, they're going to fake. No, they want to spend money. And we're talking backstage that on previous game, and we had the same problem, our problem on previous game is that people couldn't spend enough money. So you say, and I think we were also the same. So we're saying, okay, we thought, what's going to, what is the reasonable amount of money somebody will spend on a game? Let's say $500. And
over time, not in one day.
Over time, and being able only to spend $500 was a problem for that game, because a lot of people want to spend much more than that. So And in Asian, I mean, in the huge, biggest markets, you have players that spend hundreds of $1,000s per year on a game. So it's real, and they're called the whales, and that's happened. And
which is a really bad name, by the way. I prefer true fans.
So that's the thing. So that's why if you really manage to connect with those players, your numbers will go they will blow really high.
Yeah, and I mean, we are lucky enough that actually some of our games are games where we have those sort of players that will spend thousands of euros, tens of thousands of euros, even hundreds of thousands of euros. So we had that. I think we were among the first ones to get that, along with the agents with therepublic.com, where we have several players who spent over 100,000 euros in that game, single players. We're managing to get that a little bit also with Age of Lords and World at War. But you're right, it's very, very these are very difficult people to serve, because if you're spending 5,000 euros on the product, you're very demanding. You know, that product has to be top quality. You want amazing customer service.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of really what you were saying is like when you were saying, well, what we do is games as a service. We really do games as a service. Like a top customer asks us something, we need to give them an answer not within 24 hours. We need to give them an answer within a few hours. Or in fact, actually, if we don't, I usually get an email personally. Now, they will track me down and they will send me an email. So it's not just about making games. It's everything. Everything afterwards is probably more important.
And don't think those are necessary. You know, of course, you have the hundreds of $1,000s, but you have a lot of people that spend $1,000s per year. And don't think those are super rich people. I remember, I think Zynga, they were doing the Farmville, and their hardcore players were households that were buying in hard discount. So they were going to Costco to scratch, you know, a few cents on their market, but they were spending several thousand of dollars per year on those games.
But I do want to make the point that it's very different to gambling. It's not the same addiction. It's not the same thing and all that. And so I think it's important to mention that. Before we go to questions in a minute, maybe, Xavier, I'd love to ask you, what do you think are the next business models? Where do you think this is going? I mean, you had perfect timing with the App Store. You were the first one on stage there. So this is definitely a very interesting question on my part. What do you think is the next thing?
So first of all our games are free. So that's a fair thing. So people don't have to spend money to play the game ever. So what we're seeing is renting. So instead of buying an item, you know, buying a clothes or weapon, or you can rent them. We see that in Asia. We're seeing subscription model. That's something new. Let's see how that works. And we're seeing a lot of digital merchandising. So for example, we're selling branded costumes from Ghostbusters so that you can play our game with that costume digitally. So it's a little bit weird, but it works. And I would say finally, esports.
Esports.
I think esports is becoming very big. You have already professional players. You have already tournaments with millions of dollars in prize. And I heard one of the C-level of EA vision was that in 10 years from now, the money people are putting in advertising on the Super Bowl will be put in esport, because people are not watching television anymore. So Coke is not, you know, paying, or it won't make sense for them to pay that all those dollars for an advertising in a Super Bowl, but that was going to be switching to esports.
To esports, a big spectator sport. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Xavier. So we have about 9 minutes for questions. So we'd love to open it up to the audience. I think there was a question there.
You spoke about the launch and how important it is to the launch of the game to be successful, but you didn't speak too much about what you do to influence the launch and to make it more successful, to create the hype before the launch, to make the game more successful for the future. And related to that, how do you feel about the buying of influencers to make the game more successful by saying good things about the game?
The buying of users.
Buying reviews.
Why don't you...
Oh, yes, for the launch, it depends how much money you have.
Yeah.
So a lot of people put a lot of marketing dollars there. So normally what you do is you try to do a soft launch. So you launch in some territories to test your product, to see how the KPIs are. And if you have very good KPIs, in fact, I think Supercell, when they started with their game, they had amazing KPI, and then they went to investors and say, we have those amazing KPI, just put money on that to make a very big launch. So that's one. If you're really certain about your KPI, then you can put a lot of money there. You need to, as Alexis mentioned, the window time is very important, because probably you would say, okay, I want to launch during Christmas time, but Christmas time is where everybody's going to be launching. So maybe it's going to be a smarter move to launch in January or February. Then, of course, talking to have a good communication with Google and Apple, so you get featuring there. So right now, the spots on both Google and Apple, you can buy them. So they decide why they put that based on quality. So that's very different from when you're in the supermarket that you can buy that placement for the moment. That's not happening. So there is really a good shot, and those guys do really feature new games and even indie games. So if you have something good, if you talk to them, it will go through.
Yeah, that's true. I think right now you have two categories. You have the people who can go for brute force. I mean, Kebab announced that now they won't do a game for less than 20 million development budget and 20 million launch marketing budget. So that's 40 million for a game. You're talking about, movie stuff. That's a little hard for an indie or for a medium-sized studio. So if you don't have that road for you, and by the way, it's great when it works, but when it doesn't work, you've probably lost 30 million or 35 million. So it's dangerous. And I think the other avenue for us, where we cannot put 20 million on the table, is what you were saying. Is because the thing is, we're no longer in a situation where the press, as in before, if you had a really quirky, interesting game and all that, then the press could seed it and you could do something there and get a community and get excitement and all that. That's very hard to do because the specialized press, first of all, is disappearing. Second of all, they don't really like mobile games, so it's kind of hard. So now you have other avenues for you. You need to have a game actually that potentially appeals to YouTubers. YouTubers are extremely influential. PewDiePie, I think by now has 40 million followers on YouTube. If he seeds your game, then that'll be interesting. But the problem is that most of the time now, they got smart and they'll say, well, actually, I'll talk about your game, but you've got to pay me 200,000, 300,000, whatever it is, dollars. So that, again, is falling into the brute force category. So again, if you're a medium-sized studio, that's pretty hard to do the influencers as well. And you have to have a special kind of game. So then there was also Kickstarter. So you raise funds on Kickstarter, you get the community built around your game, all that. That tends to work really well for premium games that are sold on PC and Steam for a niche type of games. It doesn't tend to work very well for mobile games. So for mobile games, you really start with innovation. And you really start with basically making sure that you have a game that is innovative enough to be interesting for the players and for the app stores with a high enough quality, and that has a good story that you can really kind of sell, and that has great KPIs. So the barrier is very, very high for success. And so that's how we launch games. That we know we need to make sure that those games have those numbers. And whenever we've had a game where during the soft launch we're like, oof, the KPIs look okay, but here, like, retention isn't so good or monetization is so good. We don't have the luxury of a Supercell of saying, we'll kill it and we'll drink champagne and we'll do the next one because we're not that big. So we're like, oh, we'll try it anyway. It's always flopped. It's never worked. The only games that work are the games where in soft launch, we know it's working. So that's interesting. Yes, one more question. We have time for one more question. There's one over there. Yeah, there in the middle. Oh, there.
Hi. Well, first of all, thanks. It's a super interesting talk. I'm gonna be a bit cheeky. It's a two-part question, but I'm really interested in your opinion. You were talking about whales, like the players that spend a lot of money.
True
right?
fans, true fans.
All right. So these guys in your games, what percentage of your player base would you say they are? And in relation to that, do you think some of your games would survive without these kind of big spenders?
Yeah, the percentage thing is something. So let's say that. So if you have 100 people playing your game, normally 1 or 2 is paying, okay? And from those payers, then it depends a lot of the games, the percentage of whales. We've seen games that it could be half of it, half of the payers. It can go very down to 10%. So that's really varied. And the second one was whales is just part of the ecosystem. So in fact, when we design a game, first of all, our games are free. So you can play all the games for free. So you say, why are then people paying if the game is free? So because they want to feel different. They want to be better. They want to look different. Sometimes they're just spending for a costume $20 because they want to be different. So that's it. It's about that avatar. It was about that ego, that social ego. So when we design a game, we design it mainly for the non-payer user because that's what keeps your community. Then you design it for the whales, but then you have to design. You have a segmentation. You have people that just will spend they will pay once, and they spend 5 to 10 once. Or people that it's not only the whales. The whales, I mentioned the whales because it's always something that surprises a lot. But you have a lot. I mean, your ecosystem of player is segmented, and you need to address all of those segments.
I think from a game designer, actually, free-to-play mobile games are the most challenging to design. Because when you're doing a game that you're selling for 10, 20, 30, 40 euros and all that, the person has a sunk investment, there are sunk costs. They're going to invest half an hour of their time to understand, get the game and all that. When we're designing a game, we need to design it for really 3 types of audiences. We need to design it for the person who's going to give it first of all of them, you need to convince them in 30 seconds because the game is free to download. If in the first 30 seconds they see something they don't like, they're just going to switch to something else. Then you've got to design it so that the person who's never going to pay and has no intention of paying really gets active and interested because you need that mass of players for the guys who are paying to play with someone, right, to make it interesting. So you need to have a game that's interesting for these people. Then you need to have a game that's also interesting for the guy who's only going to pay 5 euros and wants to be entertained and all that. And then you need to have that same game, but that same design, that same experience that's also interesting for someone that can spend up to thousands of euros. So that's extremely challenging to design. And in our case, for our games, what we've seen on average is we get a bit more payers. We get 5 to 6% of people that play our games will pay. And probably, I would say that less than 1% we would qualify as true fans. And these people will probably make up to half of our revenue. So they're really important, really important. I think we're out of time. So thank you very much, everyone. And if you have any questions, we'll hang around. Thanks.